This isn't the case for everybody, I'm sure, but for me, my closest friends have always been people I could be mean to. And that sounds worse than I meant it. I'm not saying that I could be mean to them in the sense of bullying them or really trying to hurt their feelings. I mean, make fun of them, give them a hard time, and they could and did do the same thing to me. It's a sign of comfort, of trust and intimacy. You can say the most vicious, cutting things to each other, and you take no offense because you know behind the jabs and insults is love and friendship and not 1 ounce of harmful intent. It's not the sort of friendship I have with everyone because it requires a certain level of familiarity and understanding, but with my best friends and people in my family I'm the closest to, that freedom to rag on each other in a way that is mutually appreciated and safe is something I treasure. Having and valuing those kinds of relationships is probably the reason why I regard irreverence as such a virtue. There are certain times and places where things need to be handled delicately, and I don't mean to suggest otherwise, but as a general rule, I don't want to go through life treating everything as though it's too fragile to touch. This applies to the people I'm closest to, and it also applies to the media I love. When I was a kid, I used to be a lot more precious about the things I liked. I've been a Batman fan for most of my life, and I remember being about 12 years old and seeing an interview with Michael Keaton where he was promoting Batman Returns, which was either just about to come out or had recently come out, I forget which. And he said something like, if you think about it, Batman is so silly, but it's a movie and movies are supposed to be silly. And I was like, Batman's not silly. Batman's serious. People should take him seriously. By that point, I had also decided that I didn't like the Adam West show because it treated Batman like a joke, and Batman wasn't a joke. Batman was art. Batman was drama. Batman was a work of great consequence. But then, over the years, as I grew and matured and gained a more sophisticated perspective, I realized that Michael Keaton was right. Batman is silly. I didn't stop loving Batman. I didn't even stop appreciating Batman stories that took him seriously, of which there are many brilliant ones. I just loosened the hell up about it. I came to see that it was okay to see the silly side, to appreciate it, to make fun of it, to not take it so goddamn seriously all the time. One of my favorite things to do with a friend is to sit down and watch something together that we both love and just absolutely roast it. I found the joy of riffing on movies through Mystery Science Theater 3000, of course, one of my favorite shows ever, and one of the biggest single influences on my sense of humor and style of humor. The movies featured on MST3K are always terrible, and it's built into the premise that the movies Joel, Mike, Jonah, or Emily and the bots watch and make fun of kinda have it coming. But making fun of good movies, of movies you love and admire, can also be a blast. When you love a movie or a TV show or whatever and you're familiar with it, you know it backwards and forwards, and you're not precious about it. You know where all the soft spots are. You can find the best, most cutting, cleverest, funniest jokes because you know where to look, and you can share them and not feel bad about it because you and whoever you're with get that it's not about being hateful. It's not about tearing something down. It's about seeing the silly side, recognizing the imperfections in the thing you love and saying, I don't have to pretend the flaws aren't there. I see them, I acknowledge them, and I love it anyway. Like I said, this is me. This isn't everyone. This probably isn't all of you, but speaking for myself, I'm very grateful that I have a gear in my brain that allows me to not always have to take things I love seriously. It allows me to keep things in perspective. It allows me to hear criticisms of the things I love from people who don't love them without taking those criticisms personally or getting defensive. And if a favorite ongoing series or franchise releases a new project that I don't think is very good, it allows me to not be mad at the people who made it or like it more than I do. And it also allows me to honestly articulate my opinion of it without having to sugarcoat it and without feeling like I'm betraying a friend by not uncritically loving and supporting everything they do. You may have seen those Paramount Mountain commercials that Paramount Plus has produced the last couple of years to air during the Super Bowl. Because Paramount Plus is the primary streaming service where Star Trek lives now, at least here in the US, those commercials have had some Star Trek stuff in them. 2 years ago, they featured Captain Pike and Spock, as played by Anson Mount and Ethan Peck in Star Trek Discovery and Strange New Worlds. The ending of one of them included a brief shot of Spock holding up the Vulcan salute while swaying to the tune of a power ballad. Now, most of my fellow Trekkies that I saw react to this thought it was fun. It was made into a GIF and shared on social media and was the source of much amusement. But there was this certain pocket of the fandom who were just appalled. They're making fun of Star Trek. They're turning it into a joke. As though it's Holy Scripture. By the way, I think people need to lighten up about Holy Scripture too, but that's neither here nor there. Here's another example. I bet some of you remember how the Zack Snyder superfans, the ones behind the deathless Restore the Snyderverse campaign, reacted to the appearance of the Justice League in the last episode of Peacemaker. Peacemaker and his friends have just saved the day and defeated the swarm of body-snatching alien bugs. The Justice League, that's the DC Extended Universe Justice League, as seen in Zack Snyder's movie, show up, but they're too late to actually help. And Peacemaker basically tells him to get lost and yells at Aquaman to, quote, go fuck another fish. Aquaman shakes his head, says, I'm really sick of that rumor. The Flash says, it's not a rumor. And Aquaman says, fuck you, Barry. If you don't remember how the Zack Snyder superfans reacted to that, I'll go ahead and tell you, they hated it. They were indignant. How dare another filmmaker, James Gunn, from Marvel even, desecrate the characters from Zack Snyder's Justice League like this? Here's the key point. In both examples, the people who were offended by the jokes weren't offended because they didn't like those particular jokes. They were offended that there was a joke there, period. They demanded that the thing they love be taken seriously and considered it an act of blasphemy to present it in a humorous context at all. Of course, they have every right to think the jokes don't work. I disagree with them. I think Dancing Spock is a charming image, and I find the Justice League cameo at the end of Peacemaker hilarious, and I think Aquaman and the Flash come across as more authentic and likable in those few seconds than they do at any point in all 4 insufferable hours of Zack Snyder's Justice League extended cut, but opinions vary. Not liking the jokes doesn't automatically make them unreasonable. But rejecting the concept of those characters being shown in an irreverent light because you can't accept them not being presented with the utmost gravitas at all times? You have the right to feel that way too, but Jesus, that sounds exhausting. When you have that gear in your brain, when you attach some value and utility to irreverence, it not only allows you to make fun of things you love and criticize things you love, it also allows you to be tolerant of people who don't love those things as much as you do. And people who make things related to the things you love that you don't think are very good. One of my favorite superhero movies is Ang Lee's Hulk, released in 2003, starring Eric Bana, Jennifer Connelly, and Sam Elliott. I loved this movie when it came out. I still love this movie, but it has a 62% tomato meter and a 29% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm in the minority. I'm okay with that. I'd love it if the movie were more popular, if more people agreed with me and appreciated it, but they don't. And that's fine. I'm not mad at people who think it's a shitty movie. I'm also not mad at Marvel Studios for rebooting it several years later with The Incredible Hulk starring Edward Norton, Liv Tyler, and William Hurt. Sure, I was disappointed because I loved Ang Lee's Hulk movie, and if Marvel wanted to make another Hulk movie, I would have preferred it be a sequel to that one. And sure, I think The Incredible Hulk is vastly inferior to Ang Lee's Hulk in every respect, but I'm not mad at the people who made it. I don't feel cheated. I don't think Marvel Studios robbed me of something I was entitled to. It never even occurred to me to start a hashtag Restore the Leverse campaign. On the other side of the coin, I love Star Trek, but I don't love everything that's ever been produced in that franchise. I've talked before about how Star Trek Voyager is my least favorite series in the franchise, although, depending on how things shake out over the next, 7 or 8 weeks or so, I may be revising that soon, but that doesn't mean I think it shouldn't exist, or that it shouldn't be considered canon. I can't even fathom what it must be like to be an adult and have a serious emotional investment in what is and isn't canon in a given franchise. It doesn't mean I think the people who made it are bad people. I didn't think the second season of Star Trek Picard was good at all. I found it terrible from top to bottom, to the point where finding something positive to say about it is challenging to the point that I don't find it worth the effort. And based on the first episode, which is the only one I've seen as of this recording, season 3 isn't any better and may actually wind up being worse. As with Ang Lee's Hulk, I'm in the minority on that one. General sentiment about Picard Season 3 so far is very positive. Ditto for Star Trek Lower Decks, another show I have not really enjoyed for the most part. I'm not mad at the people who like it. I don't think less of anyone for enjoying a show I'm not enjoying. I don't think the people making Picard or Lower Decks are bad people. I'm not mad at them. I don't think it's not real Star Trek. I don't feel like my childhood has been ruined or any of the other histrionic bullshit that's been screeched by angry professional grievance merchants for years. Taking things too seriously, being inflexible and intolerant when it comes to interpretations that differ from your own preferences is part of what leads to the toxic reactionary discourse that has unfortunately become a cottage industry in online spaces occupied by fans of popular franchises like Marvel and DC, Star Trek, Star Wars, and others. It's not the only contributing factor. The voices within the so-called fandom menace are also motivated by no small amount of bigotry against people of color, women, queer people, and others from minority or marginalized communities who have dared to touch the things these shitheads hold sacred and regard as their exclusive property, but it's a necessary ingredient. I'm not saying you shouldn't love things and take the things you love seriously, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be critical of the things you love and be willing to unapologetically express your opinions. I'm just saying, from experience, that life is so much easier when you aren't stuck in serious mode and when you aren't so attached to your favorite things or to your particular interpretation of those things that you can't tolerate difference or dissent or variations in quality, and you can't ever have a laugh about the things you love. Our time on this earth is so short, and there are plenty of things in that time that are going to make us miserable. If our favorite things are a regular source of aggravation, maybe we ought to consider finding some new faves, or changing our approach to the ones we have, because just like with the people we're closest to, if the movies, TV shows, books, characters, whatever that we love aren't making our lives better, what's the point?